Hello, everyone, and welcome to one more episode of Overlap. Today, we are joined by Professor Shen. He is a top professor at the Fudan University and also an expert in cybersecurity, cyber governance, and also relations between China and the United States. My name is Belén de los Santos from the headquarters of Telesur in Cuba, in the middle of the Caribbean. And the idea is that we are having this conversation all the way across the world to China to discuss maybe one of the hot topics of the moment, of the year, maybe of the century, and that is AI, its implications, and bringing a little bit of a worldwide perspective of how we are looking at this topic, at the development, of course, from one of the main powers in the development of AI and everything that is going to be implicating and having consequences around the world, of course, and that is from the Chinese perspective. So thank you, Professor Shen, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here in Overlap.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Hello, everyone.
Nice to meet you as well. And so just to kickstart this conversation, from your experience, at what moment are we at this point in terms of the development of AI? Where would you say we are standing at right now in terms of what has already been developed? How is it impacting in everyday life and also productive cycles across the world?
Yeah, I think that we are standing at a very critical moment of the development, not only the ICT technologies, not only the AI development, but the development of human society and the international community as well. In short, it means that the development of the AI and ICT technology revolution has already embedded to our normal lives. It's embedded to our economic, social, political, and military lives, changing the ways we communicate with each other, changing the ways we work in, and also changing the ways that the state that in the world communities, how they using their powers, how they exchange their informations, how they affect each other's behaviors and mind. Lots of people start thinking because the development of AI providing us huge amounts of possibilities. We can use AI in many different ways. In one side, we can use AI to improve and empowering peoples, to improving their lives, to improving our capacities to governance the whole societies in a more general, in a more equal, inclusive ways. On the other side, the AI can provide more uncertainties. Those criminals, those military abuse of these AI technologies were providing more uncertainties into our international community and the world systems in general ways, and making us facing the new threat producing and empowered by the AI in the same ways. So it's a time that we need to decide, make decisions to which extent we can cooperate to launch effective cooperations to governance the development of the AI, to make decisions how to use these AI technologies to empower and improving our lives so that the world can got benefit from the development in a more general ways.
Now, Professor, we have just finished listening to the addresses made just last week at the UN General Assembly, and what you were saying was one of the topics that kept coming out, and also particularly from many voices in the global South that are worried about how this competition in terms of the race of AI will impact geopolitics in general and different aspects of the world. And many were calling, and the UN itself made a call to some of the points that you were saying, the possibility of at least setting up a table to start discussing general rules in terms of cooperation. The discussion over red lines, possible AI red lines also came up. So in your expertise, what would something like that look like? Or what could it look like? What do you think it should look like? what is cooperation in terms of setting up, I don't know, maybe boundaries for AI? Why would that be needed or possible?
Yeah. In short, there's two ways to develop the AI in the world. There's two very typical classic examples. One is ChatGPT, and the other is DeepSeek. One come from United States, and the others come from China. The ChatGPT, they represent, in according to the UN General Secretary's, to speak in this year's Paris Summit on AI governance, he said that such kind of resources intensive development mode of the AI has already leading to a kind of margin side, which means if developing countries or global south countries, they want to develop its own ChatGPT, they need in huge amount of the investment, the financial resources, the electronic resources, and the computing resources. Frankly speaking, most of the global south countries, they cannot afford such kind of ways to develop their own AIs. Then, if that's the only options for the whole world to develop the AI, it means most global south countries will suffer from a gap or the AI gaps in this new period. It means that it just will reflect and return to the models that existed in the 1950s or 1960s with the central and outcycle models. The developed countries, like United States, which can monopoly the development of the resources and the technologies of AI, keep the central positions, and the global South countries make heavily unequal independent on the US, dependent on US technologies, resources, and need to buy the hardwares, buy the softwares, buy the applications, and use their surplus got from the trade with the United States. And then it means the money, information, and data will cross from the global South to the central positions like United States. And the United States can enjoy its overwhelming advantages in these AI ages. While at the same time, we have another options that represented by Chinese DeepSeek. DeepSeek, after releasing its first large language models, you make it open sources. It's this not only open sources, it's a very much characteristics on its resources friendly, which means you need to only invest a little amount of monies, little amount of computer chips, and a little amount of electronic resources, then you can develop it. And the DeepSeek uses open sources models make you can openly download all the source code and make modifications on this source code and then training it with your own data, and then you will get your specified large language models with relatively limited resources investment on it, and then make it possible for the global south countries can also enjoy the latest development of the AI productions. So nowadays, in the UN framework, we need to make a decision. What kind of models should we encourage the countries, especially those developed countries or those countries, enjoy the technological advantages on the development of AI to accept to develop their future applications, and how to ensure that United Nations can providing a new international norms in which the least development rights of global south can be ensured by these norms in these AI ages. That's, I think, maybe one of the most important and the critical things we need to discuss in the UN framework on these AI governance related issues. And the second, on geopolitical issues, we're talking about to which extent the AI can providing constructive or positive effect on strategic stability. In short, the permanent five, those nuclear powers, now the development of the AI technologies definitely will be used on the military aspect. In a more common ways you can understand it like that. People will prefer to link the AI systems and their nuclear arsenals, command and control systems, make it more smart, make it more intelligent, and more quickly reflect to any potential threat it detected. But how to deal with issue if it went wrong? If something bugs on that code, it will leading to some doomsday scenarios for the whole world. So the United Nations need to encourage those great powers. Actually, you will find that China and the United States already developed a government level dialogue since the Biden administrations to talking about AI and strategic stabilities. It means that those countries will develop a kind of norms. They got an agreement that will not over authorization of AI to make AI make the final decision on whether to launch the nuclear missile or not. And then such kind of norms will be accepted by the UN framework and encourage other countries to agree that transform this bilateral agreement, agree the norms become a more multilateral internationalized norms so that to ensure the development of the AI will providing more strategic stabilities to the world in more general ways. And the third, another geopolitical or military related AI application is so-called AWS, automatic weapon systems, like the drones, unmanned vehicles, which carry lethal weapons. If they we armed with the AI systems, it means theoretically speaking, those unmanned vehicles, those unmanned drones, they have their own intelligence and the capacities to make the decision whether I should kill this man or not. So such kind of scenarios, it make people to feel not only uncomfortable, but worried whether such kind of automatic systems were running out of the control. It's ethnically incorrect to authorize the machines to make its own decisions to kill people or not. So they need to produce the norms to regulate the development of such kind of technologies, to regulate such kind of application of these automatic weapon systems in different scenarios, so that we can make a new norms of the behaviors or the new code of conducts in the conflict scenarios, so that to make sure that the development of AI will providing us a safer world. And also through the personal aspect, any development of these AI systems, it means you need to produce large models, and these models need to be trained by huge amount of data, especially those personal informations or those personal data are maybe the best materials to training those machines or models. It means that such kind of artificial intelligent models can be make better understanding of your personal preference, whether you are seeking the informations, whether you are looking some applications to finish your jobs. These smarter artificial intelligence applications trained by your personal or private information data can providing you a better service, but also a very huge but. That means a deep invade of your privacy. Maybe you need to make a decision how to balance the protection of your privacy and the application of this AI agent, while at the same time, for the business aspect, for the huge companies running those large language models or providing or running those huge social media platforms, they are eagerly to got your information and data. That means money that can providing them huge amount of profits. So you need to got a balance. How to launch a balance between a kind of triangles. One point is the protection of your privacies. The second point is to ensure how to make this artificial intelligence more smarter or more action like a normal human being so that it can provide you a better service. And the third point is how to make sure those companies, those business aspects can got the profits they deserved, while at the same time you need to keep them not going too far from that. Such kind of governance systems cannot be easily achieved by single companies or single peoples. So you need to put it in the UN multilateral framework and use this UN framework as a kind of platforms, a very inclusive platforms to include the different actors, both the state actors and the non-state actors, to join together, to sit down, to dialogue, to raise the questions, and to find out the solutions step by step. So that's the reason, or that's the most important three things we need to solve in the UN framework to launch discuss on this AI governance.
Now, Professor, so many things from what you are saying just bring up so many questions. Of course, we were saying it's such a complex topic and also a challenge to tackle it from a communicational perspective, because so many of these things maybe appear abstract at first glance, and maybe we are always stuck in the same sci-fi images as the world is really moving towards something that is already involved in everyday life. Just picking up from one of the last things that you were pointing out, the possibility of striking this balance between the need to move these models forward, hopefully in a productive sense, but also balance it with the security issues, for example, the use of private data, whom is managing that data, and also what you were saying, the interest behind all of this. Is it a private profit interest? Is it a government goal? Is there some sort of upper coordination being able to perform that balance? Of course, this raises the question that comes once and time again, that has to do with the possibilities of regulation, coordination. What is the role of the state, for example, in all of these discussions? And I assume, and we know that the China model and the US model have also very different perspectives in this aspect. What is your take on this possibility? How can this development be regulated or coordinated so that it does not just follow some profit logic that disregards all the other risks in terms of security, in terms of the harms it could impact in different areas of society? I assume that it's impossible to try to prevent any future harms that maybe we do not know that may arise in the future. But of course, we could be thinking into a more controlled, so to speak, development, and a more like free up for grabs, dominated by a profit-seeking motivation. What do you think in this terms, in terms of the possibility or the role of regulation?
Actually, I have just have examples, not that directly related to AI governance, but very important, valuable examples to take it as a reference. You can read the latest framework about how to make the TikTok deal in the United States between China and the US. Those delegations, they just got a very brief agreement, and the United States, the President Trump already signed the executive orders to push forward these deals. Since the 2018, the United States talking about how to deal with these TikTok issues. At first, they use a passage, you can name it securitizations, which means they describe the running of the TikTok as kind of national security threat to the United States, and use a highly politicalization ways to deal with it. They just use those very ideological labels to talk about these terms. This company is unsafe because this company belongs to China, and Chinese government is a Communist Party government, and you cannot trust it. So your data in that companies, in that applications is unsafe, is threatened. So the only solution is we need to get those companies out of the hand of Chinese government and so on. But now, finally, they go to an agreement between these two sides. You'll find that that's agreement highly technical and a functional agreement, which means they're talking about detailed functional issues. The first, how to effectively protect the US users' data to protect their privacy. So the solution is data localization. We build a localized data. Those US users' data are the personal data are stored in that centers, in their servers, and then a trusted United States companies monitor the running of these servers to ensure that these data can keep in a safe ways. And then we split the operating of TikTok companies. These companies can running as state users, but these data by technical methods can be ensured as this US user data is protected by US legal systems and US companies. And the Chinese companies can ensure its normal commercial runnings and got normal commercial profits. And Chinese governments can protect Chinese companies' overseas interest in a more balanced ways. So that's a general examples how to ensure and launch a balanced ways to make it possible to protect the privacy, to protect the efficiency, and to ensure those companies can make profits at the same time, just those AI models. So in future, we may see that in the UN framework, we're talking about AI governance, it will separate in different scenarios. In certain scenarios, for example, the military use of AI technologies, we're talking about this AI need to be controlled by the state actors and ensure that AI will not become a new threat to the strategic stabilities between state actors. On the commercial or the personal use aspect, we may be development a kind of norms. Uh, Last year, United Nations just passed a global digital compact in which it has launched guiding principles how to governance personal data, how to governance something like new applications like represented by AI, those guiding principles. And under that guiding principles, we need the members of United Nations, all those companies providing so-called best practice, which means you can development a kind of practice and in different companies and different scenarios and different countries. And in that practice, you will find that maybe we can find a technical solutions to ensure the effective protections of personal privacy information data storages in certain servers. And then we can providing some legal requirement. Those companies must fulfill those legal requirements. Otherwise, they cannot take advantages of using these data to get profits. While at the same time, by producing such kind of legal systems, we need to consider those companies need to make profits. Otherwise, it cannot become a company. The company means they need a reasonable requirement for profits. So we need to allow them to use these data. And then by dialogue, negotiation, coordinations, according to different legal, historical, and cultural background, maybe different countries and different regions can got different solutions. And then in the UN framework, we put all these solutions together and finding out a kind of baseline. This baseline means a very limited requirement must be fulfilled in all scenarios. It means that your privacy data will be protected in these very base levels. And then it's providing you possibilities to development your more regional or inside your own state, how to governance these AI applications. Then we will have this three-level models to development this AI governance practice. The first level is international level, which means the UN framework. The second may be the regional levels. Inside different geopolitical regions or sub-regions, the nearby countries, if they sharing those informations and it has very close cross-border data activities by doing business, they need to develop their own more regional standards, how to protect and ensure the security of these cross-border data flows. And then at the state levels, means inside your state, you got a legal systems to protect the security and to protection your privacy of your personal informations stored in the internet, those digitalized personal data, which is very important to development of your own AI applications. Such kind of international, regional, and state three layers can providing you a very general framework to develop AI governance systems in the futures.
And of course, from what you're saying, this aspect brings together and it continues to call a look into the international aspect and the cooperation between nations. So it seems that such a development, of course, we could maybe say that this was true at different levels for any form of scientific development. But of course, AI is just fostering this need to think in terms of the relations between nations. And that is where the regional, the international perspective is so important. And this is what many countries from the global south continue to come back to, because they know that they are part of that system, but from a different perspective. Of course, you were saying it before, many of these nations do not have the capabilities and maybe will not have it, at least to fund and start from the very beginning, the very large models with the infrastructure that calls for. There are options, as you were saying before, regarding the different forms of adaptation of the open source development. So the possibility of adapting already available technology, that is something that many nations are looking into. In Latin America in particular, in the past month, many governments have brought up this question permanently of the need to think about what AI sovereignty means for the region. What they're looking at is that many systems that are operating on AI technology that is following interest other than our own nations are having a direct impact, for example, in terms of the circulation of communication, the circulation of fake news, for example, the direct impact it's having in political campaigns and how that leads to political outcomes. That this has been a very real concrete thing that has been happening. And of course, many scientists and politicians are looking into this to see, okay, what is happening? What can we do about it? And how do we reframe the idea of sovereignty in this new AI world? So first of all, you before talked about another concept that keeps coming up, that is the AI gap. How would you describe that? What does it mean? And what are the concrete effects for example, a nation or an entire region that is left outside from the possibility of generating its own AI models? What impacts could that have on everyday life?
You're talking about very interesting questions. Actually, because I also served as the director of the BRICS research centers in Fudan universities, so I traveled to Brazil. In the Brazil, I have a very interesting find out. A Chinese company, Huawei, they doing their business in Brazil. Huawei also enjoys has very famous advantages on development of its own AI chips and AI models. According to my knowledge, Huawei launched an online AI school in Brazil, which means it's not only doing business there, it's providing a kind of education service to Brazil young generations, to providing them the technologies So that's part of the models of the Chinese government's strategic programs, One Belt, One Road initiatives, which means which in the framework of so-called digital Silk Road. In these programs, the Chinese government are willing to providing a kind of global public goods. I think it's also the last year, President Xi Jinping, the top leaders of China, make an open statement inside China, say that in the 21st centuries, the artificial intelligence is kind of international public goods which can make benefits of all human beings. And according to China's foreign strategies, as the world's biggest developing countries, we believe we have kind of obligations to providing such kind of public goods to the global South countries. According to my knowledges, the question you mentioned is the reality. Most of the global South countries, they don't have enough financial resources all those hardware capacities to develop their own artificial intelligent applications 100% by themselves. They need some helps from the leading actors. And I think China are willing to providing such kind of public goods, which means in this One Belt, One Road initiatives, China already providing the basement for the development of AI, which means that is infrastructures, the road, the electronic power grid, and the telecommunication systems. And now, according to my knowledge, China maybe, I think in futures, we can looking forward the futures. And it's highly possibility we have such kind of scenarios. China providing you or helping you to development a kind of local infrastructures of AI, which means China providing you the road, electronic powers, telecommunications, the AI chips produced by Huawei companies have a very safer and a robust supply chain supporting of these chips, and give you an open source large language models. And then it become a digital infrastructures to development of your own AIs. You can develop your own artificial intelligent agents or other applications on that infrastructures. And during that process, you make training of your peoples, your young engineers who has familiar with these AI issues and got their own technological stack on AIs. And then step by step, maybe the first period is you development your own AI applications according to or based on those digital infrastructures provided by China. And then in the phase 2 or phase 3, you are powerful enough or you get enough technologies and enough resources, you can have your more your own AI models or systems in that times. So I think that's the road we need to encourage, or those models we need to encourage in the UN framework. Especially United Nations usually use the development and name Sustainable Development Goals 2035. Maybe China is the only big power in the world still insist that this is very important strategic roles to our world. I think that the development of AI in the global South countries, with the empowerment from China's resources and the capacities, should become the most important component that helping us to realize this SDG 2035 in the coming few years.
And Professor, you were just talking about the sustainable goals, and one of the questions that are also coming up in public discourse time and time again, maybe with more like a pressing matter in the past years, has to do with how this AI development could be affecting, or how does it relate to the climate impact, the resources it's taking up or that it's going to need, looking into the future development. We've seen, of course, an exponential rise. Much of what we're talking about here has to do with, well, maybe a generation that is looking into something that is increasingly changing in the fastest pace that we've seen any other scientific development. So of course, many of the questions have to do with, okay, what's coming next? What is this looking? How are we looking at this in 5, 10 years? And the question of the natural resources and the natural impact that for many countries in the global south are directly impacting the living conditions of communities. This is not just for AI, of course, but it's a region of the world that has this relationship with its natural resources in any aspect, and this is the hot topic of today. Do you have a take on how this AI development in the present one and in the coming years, how does that relate to the need to also foster policies and infrastructure that take care of a sustainable development in terms of the climate crisis that we're facing?
First, you need to use these SDG policies or goals to regulate the directions of the development of AI and applications, not on the opposite. You should not let the technology to control your development. You need to use a strategic development, sustainable development goals to regulate the path or the directions of where the technology is used, applied, and developed. So you need to put this relationship correctly. And then it means the development of AI can providing you a very powerful tools. Those tools can help you to make a more efficiency use your digitalized information and the data and transform it into a kind of very valuable strategic resources in this digitalized age, just like oils in the industrial ages. And if you look at the African continent, the African Unions has their 2020 digital transformation strategic or something like that. During that strategic books, they have a very clear understanding. They need to make effective control and the regulation and the governance of their own raw data resources. But they also will list those shortcomings or the main challenges. They have challenges on a very weak infrastructures. They don't have enough capacities on the technological aspect to ensure the effective control and the use of these data resources. And then the possible strategy is to finding out reliable strategic partners which can providing you strategic support on that aspect. So to the Latin American countries or the global South countries in a more general ways, it's kind of options. You need to make a choice. The first, you make a clear decision whether or not you want to take these advantages. This advantage means the development of this AI. Nowadays, we find out the breakthrough of AI represented by the large language models. This will become a strategic chance for all global South countries. If you can got empowerment of these AI applications, your economic development, social governance, and the living standard can hugely improve if you do it correctly. And the second, you need to take advantage of the changing of the guiding principles of global communities, especially in the UN framework. Nowadays, in the UN framework, though we have lots of challenges, but generally speaking, people still believe, and especially the US General Secretary, he wants to push forward the AI governance in a way that is very friendly and inclusive and equally to global South countries. which means the global south countries should not be left up on the AI governance or the AI development. And then the UN can put some ethnical requirement to those developed countries because it's your duties, something you like your delegations to help or to ensure that the AI is not a kind of very expensive toys for a very limited VIP clubs. Those global south countries, they also have their own rights to equally access to these technologies, to these applications, and got benefit during that process. And I have to say, China maybe is one of the best options while the global south countries think about the development of their own AI capacities. Because the number one reason is China is a very reliable friend, which means to the global south countries, China willingly to providing the assistance on the development of your own AI capacities without any preconditions, especially comparing to United States. There's a very famous videos you can find on the YouTube. Altman, the founding man and the chairman of the OpenAI, visit India, I think in the year 2023 or 22, just a year before China released the DeepSeek. At that time, the ChatGPT is the only options, the only examples of the latest development of the LLM. During that visit, there's an India scientist asked Altman whether is it possible for India to have its own LLM by investment, for example, 10 million US dollars, and while at the same time you have about 30 to 40 India scientists, very smart people on AI technologies and data issues. The answer of Altman is, please don't talk about LLM if your investment is less than $10 million. It's sending a very clear signals that this LLM, this ChatGPT, is monopolized by this OpenAI. It's a very expensive and exclusive toys. You are not inside these clubs. While when the DeepSeek released, one of the shocking wave is it can train these huge models in a relatively lower cost, which can afford by countries like India or those global south countries. And we're providing a very resources friendly options to develop this AI by maybe most of these global south countries. And also, I can say very clearly, Chinese government are preparing to providing any kind of assistance for such kind of development, for such kind of requirement. You can dialogue, you can finding out those strategic programs inside the One Road, One Belt initiatives in these years, in the future years, in the coming 3, 5, or 10 years. Chinese government are very willingly to help the global south countries to have their own AI centers, or such kind of AI centers maybe not only serve for one countries, it can become a regional AI centers. These regional AI centers can make contribution for those countries to live in the sub-regions, maybe not only one countries, but 5 or 10 countries. Like to the Latin Americans, we can set up 2, 3, or 4 regional AI centers located in countries big enough to afford the power grids or those infrastructure requirement, but the information and the data can be transferred through the network across the region borders. Because inside China, we launch a test. We transfer the data located in our east part and transfer it to the western part. In the Xinjiang province, we have huge amount of computing centers there. We name it a 东数西算, which means the data from the east to computer in the west. That means then that's the internet works. You transfer data in these networks, and then you got those comparative advantages. Inside China, the east part represent those relatively economic developed regions. The west part represent those economic and technically relatively lower developed regions. We also understand if we invest AI too much on east part of China, that will lead into internal gaps between the rich and poor regions inside China. That's why China very sensitive for those requirements from the global south countries to develop their own AI infrastructures, their programs, or their applications, because we believe such kind of inclusive development is very important, not only for these countries, but also for AI itself. Because unless we're doing AI development in that way, which means in an inclusive ways, we cannot ensure the AI development will do benefit for all human beings. Because the most populations in the world, they're located in the global south. It's kind of ethnical and even you can say a kind of international normative delegations to ensure that the most part of the human societies should got benefit from the development of the AI in a more general ways.
So many powerful images. I was just resonating so much with this idea of not letting AI become a very expensive toy for just a few. And this last notion of thinking of an inclusive development of AI as the path to go. Of course, from a Latin American perspective, a lot of what you were saying is some of what the experts on the field from this region are thinking about. There are actually some projects that are ongoing at this moment thinking of building on a regional platform the possibility of a model that starts gathering that data from a local perspective. Because of course, one of the things that is happening is that we are taking and applying a lot of the models that have been built on data widely collected on other regions of the world, other languages, other perspectives and cultural parameters. So some of those projects are already ongoing. I imagine there is much to think about in terms of what you were saying, building on already available technology and those kinds of AI technology that allows for global south countries to take on that base and then build on that at a regional level, not maybe just one nation at a time, but maybe in a collaboration of Latin American countries as it is happening. There's an ongoing project based in Chile, actually, at this moment, looking into this perspective. And that idea of inclusive development of AI, I think, is a good one to start wrapping up this conversation. You were saying this development could lead to the development and better living conditions for humanity if it's done correctly. So let's hope that it is. Gathering from what you were saying, it's so important to think of the power of delegations, the governments that need to speak up on the sovereign interests of this global south countries, being at a national or a regional level, and being able to put on the table our own needs in this development. So I think maybe there's going to be a key around there. Thank you so much, Professor Shen, for this conversation, for your insights, and for continuing this ongoing process of understanding the process of AI at this moment.
Okay, thank you very much. It's also my great honors to join these programs and to sharing you with my point on this AI governance, and in which futures we have more discussion on those AI governance, cybersecurity, and geopolitical affairs in more general ways.
We'll definitely have to. Thank you so much again, Professor Shen. And well, the world and the current state of the world is actually calling for us to continue having this conversation. So we will make a point of continuing that ongoing dialogue. Thank you so much. And that was all for this new episode of Overlap. So keep joining us for these conversations from across the world.
Thank you. That's also my great pleasure to dialogue with you.